Hi, everyone. Honored to be here with all of you to talk about data rights and why decentralized technologies are changing our future, our opportunities, are really transforming the landscape of what I believe is one of the most important questions of our time, which is, what are our data rights? How do we define those? How do we protect what our rights should be? It was in 2017 when we were first told by the economists that, with all estimates, our data has now become the world's most valuable asset, an asset class now more valuable than oil. So if we've surpassed oil and gas with, how is it that somehow digital assets, an asset class made mostly of our personal information, is the only asset class where we do not have rights to its value? We have created a multi-trillion-dollar industry over the past few decades by consistently using technology every single day in, day out, without actually understanding how it works. When we were young, we were taught how to use technology, how you could send an email to your friends or family, how you could search for something on a web client. But we were not told that if you were to type something into that search box, that one day up to millions of companies around the world would own that information. That you type is being collected and then bought and sold and traded around the world and connected with you and your device. I think if we were told that in school, we probably would have used technology quite differently. But we haven't. We've continued to use technology tools, platforms, social media, mobile devices for our entire existence. And the ways that we've used them, who we're communicating with, where we are, what we're doing, our interests, our loves, our likes, our dislikes, all of these things are being recorded and connected to us. And that incredibly valuable information is what has created some of the world's most wealthy companies, the companies that are worth trillions of dollars or at least hundreds of millions of dollars. Our time, our attention. So the question around how we protect our information from here into the future could not possibly be more important. I've been thinking about this problem for very many years, and I suppose it'll help for me to give a little bit more information on my background and how I came to think about some of these issues. So I've spent about half of my career training as a human rights lawyer, working in human rights activism, and the other half specifically working on technology projects, developing transparent and useful technology tools, and working on technology policy, legislation, regulation, and then of course, the education and awareness piece. How do we actually bring the world's digital and what we're giving away, or how not to give things away when we are engaging in our digital lives? And especially this past year, a year when the entire world was forced to lead nearly a completely digital life, this question has become more important than ever before. So in my background, starting first in human rights law and then moving into technology advisory, I really have spent a lot of time thinking about what it takes to secure your rights. How do we define what our rights are online or what they should be? How do we make sure that as entrepreneurs, as lawyers, as policymakers, that we are doing the right thing, that we actually are starting to comprehend and that we are actually making sure that we have serious definitions around this. So some of you might know me as the Cambridge Analytica whistleblower. I had spent very many years working in human rights law and working across different types of technology projects for governments, for companies, and figuring out how much data existed, not just within a certain company, but how much data was available to purchase, to license, and what that actually meant, how that data was being used, and unfortunately, how that data could be abused. So it was in March 2018 when I decided I could be one of the people in technology that came forward and said, the way that the data industry works, where like mine was spending millions of dollars a year purchasing and licensing information about people that they did not consensually give up, that what we could actually do instead was to create more transparency, more permission structures, more opt-in around how human beings actually interact with technology. What does data protection actually mean? What does privacy mean in practice? And how do we reach, firstly, levels of education and awareness? Secondly, legislation and regulation of these platforms to make sure that compliance is actually implementable. And thirdly, how do we actually create technology that is more ethical, that is more transparent, that gives us those permission structures that we are looking for, and actually helps us have more so that we can make better decisions about what we feel comfortable giving away, or of course, what we want to keep private. So what I think is so important about decentralized technologies is that with distributed ledger technology, with blockchain technology, for the first time, we're going back to that age-old mantra from the cypherpunks. I don't know how many of you here actually used to follow them back in the day, but they used to say something all the time, which was, cryptography is freedom. If you have the ability to encrypt and control your digital assets, then you have the ability to make choices about your privacy. Actually have an ethical relationship with what information we choose to share or not. We can do things in our digital lives that are more on our terms. And what's so incredibly important about that? Let's go a little bit deeper into what those different types of privacy and data permission structures actually mean. So first of all, what are we looking for when we ask for more data rights? Firstly, it would be transparency. What data is being collected about us and why? Where is it going? I bet you if I were to be in an actual room with all of you and I asked you to raise your hands, how many people here actually read the terms and conditions of what data is being collected about them by new apps? That many hands, maybe a few. Maybe some of you out there are privacy advocates. Maybe some of you are technologists that think about these permission structures. But it's very likely that most of you haven't even read those terms and conditions. And what does that mean? Of course, what that means is that you probably have a phone that is full of perhaps 50 to 100 different applications that are built by companies all around the world, developers you don't know, companies you don't know. And those individuals and companies are getting access to everyone in your contacts book, your photos, your videos, your live location, data that you're creating in other apps, even possibly the ability to turn on your microphone or your camera whenever they would like to. So having a way or not is so incredibly important. I bet you if you took the time to actually read some of those terms and conditions, you would be shocked to find that you don't even understand half of the things that they're telling you. It's because it's written in something called legalese. Lawyers write these terms and conditions specifically to trick you into giving away more than you should. So a huge revolution in transparency is not just distributed ledger because you have transparency over what data you're going to share and what not. But my favorite is when we get into the actual permission structures and consent mechanisms. In a lot of distributed ledger technology on a lot of blockchain platforms, you now see something called smart contracting technology. So instead of signing away those terms and conditions that you're forced to sign, instead you can interact with self-contracts. So for instance, you'd be able to set your terms for sharing your data if you so chose to. You could say, I'm very happy to share my data securely and anonymously for 25%, 30% of the actual value that the companies collecting it are then going to go and reap the rewards from. If you feel comfortable with that, you could, similar to an Airbnb model, which is my favorite way to describe it because it's a proven, simple, and successful business model, which is if you wanted to share your personal information and you were happy to do that and you were happy to reap the rewards from that, then if you owned your personal information using encrypted platforms, you could, for instance, allow someone to access it just like your home on Airbnb. Want to use your data for, have access to it for, what they're going to use it for, and you agree on a price before you hand away those precious keys. That is the transparent, consensual type of agreement that a lot of these new transparent and ethical platforms allow you to engage with. It's possible that we have a future where our digital assets are not taken from us under our nose, where we're not agreeing to things that we don't understand, where things are more on our own terms. And now that we see the explosion of industries like NFTs, non-fungible tokens, this goes back to control, consent, and ownership of your digital content, of your digital assets, of your data. What NFTs allow you to do is to actually own, instead of uploading a piece of artwork or a song and that being stolen the moment that it ends up on a digital platform, you're able to use encryption to actually own it, to enshrine your rights in that token. And you can decide what your rights are, what royalties you want, what types of terms you might be leasing out this type of data or content for. But you get to own it and you get to choose when you trade it on your terms. So the entire world all of a sudden is starting to understand what data ownership actually means, what data rights are. Giving yourself legal rights that you would expect for your physical assets in your house, now you can have that in your digital life. Something which I think we've all been experiencing over the past year a lot more than we ever expected to. Biggest revolution in these types of technologies and how they can be used. And that's going back to where we started, which is that data is the world's most valuable asset. This is a multi-trillion-dollar industry that has created most of the world's largest companies, most valuable companies. And they're made up of our digital assets. So imagine how much your digital assets are actually worth every single day. We as technologists, as activists, as lawyers, have been able to prove that at minimum, your data is worth enough every day where you could buy enough groceries to feed yourself and your family. What does that mean? It means instead of giving away your data for free, you could start giving people access to your digital assets. And you could earn enough money every day to secure your basic human rights. That is the most revolutionary part of how decentralized technologies are going to be securing our digital future. At a time where in the United States alone, we have over 30% unemployment, and all around the world, there are many other countries that already had more people out of work than that before coronavirus shutdown. We're starting to think about the future of work. How can we possibly use technology to make sure people can meet their basic needs? And this is something that I discuss with legislators and policymakers and business leaders nearly every day. That if we start giving people access to the value that they create, that every single day, just by carrying around a device, that we can earn enough to secure our human rights, our basic human rights, which is make sure that everyone on Earth that has a device is earning enough just by producing basic information about their daily life, that they can feel more safe, more secure, more taken care of in these uncertain times. So thank you all for being here and for listening to this. If you want to know any more about some of these topics, please check out my website, ownyourdata.foundation. And please follow me at ownyourdata.now on Twitter. We often talk about issues around data ownership, data rights, and digital literacy, how you can become more informed and more active on these issues, how you can ask your legislators to actually be working on laws that protect your rights, and how you can learn more about how technologies work and how you can play a part in a more ethical digital future.